Welcome to the Dream Life is Real Life podcast with your host, Hannah Hermanson, bringing you real life stories of people who realized their dreams to educate and inspire you to create your legacy of abundance now.
We are back, and today we are hanging out with Jenn Sauer. She's an avid traveler, experience maker, insatiable learner, massage therapist, and accidental entrepreneur. Her personal mission is to do things and do good things and make a big impact. Whether she's helping someone with health issues through massage therapy or reaching out into the community to help those that are less fortunate, she wants to make a positive and lasting impact. She's explored cultures all over the world. She's lived in a camper, a car, and even a cruise ship, but she's never turned down an adventure or a challenge. And she's never been a business owner until 3 years ago. Today, Jenn owns the Pushy Goat, a unique holistic spa in Kansas. And the ups and downs of building the business and its day-to-day responsibilities have been daunting yet exciting. Turning it into an opportunity to not only help her clients, but to impact the community gave her the drive to push through all of those frustrations. Today, she has the opportunity to affect change, no matter how small, in the minds and bodies of her clients and community. Welcome, my friend Jenn.
Yay! I'm so excited. You just made me sound really amazing. I was like, I need to know that person.
It's interesting. Yeah, I've experimented with doing the intro later, like when the person isn't on. But people always feel so awesome hearing this about themselves. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just give you the warm fuzzies for 1 minute and make my editing job way easier. So yes. You are a big deal.
And I am all about making life easier and being more efficient. That is for sure. So thank you for having me. I'm super excited to finally get a chance to talk to you again. For those people who don't know, Hannah and I were lucky enough to meet accidentally or on purpose, however you want to look at it, when we were on a trip in China. A couple of months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I always talk about how everything is random and nothing is random and you just have to go with it. So it's so great that, we got connected. We had the most ridiculous time. I think that's a good way to talk about our adventures in China on a
definitely
bus, which was a way I had never really traveled before,
or myself.
Yeah, I think we made a pretty good time out of it.
Yeah, we did. You know what? Like you said, we always pay attention to our audience and our crowd. We're always on. And you and I seem to get the most out of each other's jokes. So it worked out really well. And like you, actually, I was in Bermuda a couple of years ago, and I thought I accidentally met one of my friends that I'm lucky enough to have had now for the last couple of years. I thought it was by accident on a tour because everything else got rained out. And as we were walking through the jungle in Bermuda, and he's telling us all about the medicinal plants there and how they use literally absolutely everything, I said, wow, what are the chances? And he turned around and he looked at me and he said, nothing is by chance. Everything happens the way it's supposed to. So yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All of the random things or the people that cross your path are definitely there for a reason. And when I started to hear your story, we were just we have a very similar sense of humor, so we were cracking up. But then when I started to hear your story and your career, I was like, oh, of course we are best buddies instantly because we have so much in common. We look at the world in a really unique but similar way. And of course you have your own business and our entrepreneurial journey. So yeah, I want listeners who are like-minded with us in a lot of ways to hear a little bit about where you've come from and how you are now a owner of a business called the Pushy Goat in Kansas.
So I'll try to give you highlights because it is literally a 19-year journey in massage of how I got to where I am today. And I don't have a really unique story. When I was in massage school in Austin, Texas, they went around the room and they asked people what your reason was for getting into massage. And everybody had this really like touching story about having it helped them with some medical condition or physical condition or emotional or whatever. And when it got to me, I was a little stressed out because I'm like, wow, I just saw an ad and I wanted to work on a cruise ship. And so here I am. And I've always been, I think it really helps that I come from the Midwest because, you know, and you're from the Midwest too. So you understand this. It's easy for us to kind of have a more relatable sense of just connectedness, not only to people, because it's ingrained in our culture to just be friendly and kind and helpful.
Down to earth.
Yeah, just down to earth. And at the same time, having a really good understanding of a work ethic and what it takes to be successful. Nothing in this life is ever just handed to you. And I think being from the Midwest really, really kind of helped to instill that idea in me. And so when I started off doing massage in Austin, I ended up working in Houston for a few years. I lived in California. I worked on cruise ships and I did all of these, you know, cool, crazy things, which at the time, to be really honest with you, I didn't realize was that unique, you know? When you're kind of in the moment, it's hard to realize really just how many people are probably living vicariously through you. So it took me several years to really kind of understand that and appreciate it. But after I worked on cruise ships, I went back to school. I lived in Washington State and I got my undergraduate degree in biocultural anthropology. And yep, I'm still doing massage because there's not tons you can do with just an undergrad in that. But I was able to apply that knowledge back to massage and really just being able to relate to people and connect to people on different levels and from all over the world. And when I moved to Kansas, to Wichita, when my nephew was born, I kind of went around to a lot of different places and I worked in a lot of different places here and I just wasn't happy. I felt like I was always picking up everybody else's slack and including the owners. And it could be, you know, I don't mean to be disrespectful at all, but it just felt like a lot of the weight was on my shoulders and I really wasn't getting much reward. I was working 7 days a week, bending over backwards to make my clients happy and, you know, barely making ends meet. And 3 years ago, I had enough. I think what happened was it was the middle of the winter. It was snowing outside. And I was off. I had a day off. I went down to the chiropractor and I happened to drive down the street that the spa was at that I worked on. And there was this little old man standing out front. He was probably, actually, I know he was in his upper 80s and in the freezing cold wind and snow. And I came around the back and I noticed a piece of paper on the door and the person that was supposed to be working that day, who happened to be the owner, decided she just didn't want to work. And instead of contacting her clients, she left it for them to just discover when they came in. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't, you know, I just happened to be in this space. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to give it one more shot. Everybody's been telling me for years that I should open up my own business, that I have the work ethic to do so, but I just never really had the confidence in myself. And luckily enough, I had a friend who was moving into this new place in like this historic neighborhood in the town that I live in. And she had a basement with a separate entrance and a bathroom. And she said, if you want, you can use it. And my 6-month plan of being down there and then finding a new location turned into 3 months. And then my year plan turned into like 4 months. And by the end of my first year of business, I had taken over this entire 2,000 square foot building with 6 treatment rooms, you know, and all this other crazy stuff in it. And I just started kind of just grinding, just building my business step by step. I tell people all the time that, you know, if you think about it as a pyramid, you can have whatever fancy or tree or whatever you want. You can have whatever fancy thing that you want on top, but as long as your foundation isn't strong and there's a crack in it, it's not going to be successful. So just to make sure that you maintain having that, and that's what I've done like for the last 3 years, is just stuck my nose to the ground and just hustled and just tried really, really hard to be unique and make a special place for clients to come where they don't feel like they're second to the income that's coming in. To me, I wouldn't have my business if it weren't for the clients that come in and support me, whether it's through them coming in and being on my table or on all the other girls' tables or their word of mouth. It all depends on them. Yeah. So I can sit here and say that I do this and I do that and all those other things, which I do. I work all the time, whether it's, my hands-on or doing marketing or whatever. But again, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do that if it weren't for the people that have supported me.
Yeah, for people who have been listening to the podcast or things that I say enough, they're going to roll their eyes and they're expecting me to reiterate my mantra that when you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. But that first piece of helping other people is so critical to creating something that does make a big impact and is sustainable, like you've talked about. And the other piece, I'm sitting here personally just like, yeah, I am also from the Midwest and admittedly use that as, I poo-poo that, if you will. It's just very small town. Everyone's living the status quo. But you are so right. I really do think that there is something in that mindset that has motivated me to be a hard worker, even when I don't have a boss that's showing up or not showing up or telling me what to do. And I think that successful entrepreneurs, no matter where they're born, they do have that, pick themselves up by the bootstraps, be a go-getter, put your nose to the grind, sort of embedded, in their DNA at some point.
For sure. And go ahead. Sorry.
No, please.
No, seriously, go. I'll remember.
I'll go. No, look, I'm going to forget. No. I was going to ask you, though, for the days, specifically in your own business, because I know it's a very different energy when you're working 7 days a week for someone else as opposed to your own vision. What about the days when you don't feel like working hard? How do you maintain your motivation?
You know what? I'm going to be really honest. Some days I don't. Some days it's really difficult to pick yourself up and keep going and know that what you're doing is for a greater cause, whether it's to help the people that you're responsible for because they're working for you or with you, or you're responsible for your clients or whatever plans you have for your future or responsible for your bills. It's really hard and it can be really daunting. And whether you have somebody there that's, a partner, or whether it's business or personal, or you're alone, sometimes you're not going to be able to pick yourself up. And something that I've learned is, and really over the last year, and they say that the third year, you learn a lot of personal things about yourself. But what I really learned is to not beat myself up for the days that I can't pick myself up. It's okay to stay home and lay under a blanket and recharge your batteries however you need to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But something that's happened to me lately that, and actually it came up again today. There was a play that was written back in early 1900s by, I know I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but I'll just say the play name. It's called The Bluebird. Okay. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because it pertains 100% to your question. And the fact that it came up again this morning in a book that I was reading, makes me think that maybe nothing's random, and maybe somebody else will benefit from this. So this play talks about two young children, and they're constantly looking out the window. They were born into a family that was not very well off, pretty poor, and they're constantly looking out across the street at this house that's just has this family that's full of wealth. They have rich desserts and beautiful decorations and all these other amazing things. And they're constantly yearning for all of those things because they're without. And, they introduce this, a fairy. And so the fairy encourages them to go out into life and search for a bluebird because it's the bluebird of happiness. And so they go across the world and, they see all of these wonderful, beautiful things. But when they finally journey back home, they walk into their backyard and the bluebird's sitting right there. And the lesson is that, the bluebird of happiness is always right there. It's within you. You've had it all along. And so I think that's one thing that I try to remind myself of, is that happiness isn't in all of and it's really hard for me because I'm a huge daydreamer and I want to do all of these things. But it's a constant thing that I have to remind myself that I'm to be grateful of what I have and to see the beauty in all of the things that even when they don't go the way that I want them to go. And so that's something that I've worked on over the last year, but also sometimes I just stay home and turn my lights off and don't talk to anybody. So it's okay to do both things.
Totally. Yeah. I think there's so much power in I know there is, and this comes up over and over, but the slowing down of things, as go-getters or as people with big visions, big dreams, we can just be on that hamster wheel all the time. And if we don't consciously slow ourselves down and be like, oh my God, look at this freaking bluebird I have created or I have always had, then you never will find the bluebird, no matter how much you do or how hard you work.
Right.
That's definitely something that I'm working on, but man, it's not easy when it feels like, like you said, building a team and having clients, all these people depending on you. Man, I just want to put a sign on the door on a cold day and just tell everyone to figure it out.
I know you can't do. I mean, I guess you can do that, but I don't think it's the right thing to do. And the other thing is that I'm always honest with people about that. If I'm having a day where I just need a day, thankfully my clients or whoever are understanding enough that because I'm honest with them and not lying and saying, I'm sick, I woke up with a sore throat, or I have this or I have that, they're way more understanding and accepting of who I am and what's going on in my life because they know that I'm being honest with them. And I think it's important to not only be honest with, your clients or your team members or whoever it is, but to also be really honest with yourself. And that's really something that I think has gotten me through a lot of things, is just keeping that as like a number one goal in my life too. So
transparency.
It's not easy, especially when you're dealing. It's really not easy to be honest with yourself sometimes, That's the worst.
And sometimes I find like I've totally done that, like, oh, I have a sore throat, can't do this, can't do that, and then I get a sore throat, right? Like that self-fulfilling prophecy of like, then it just like perpetuates and I don't feel good all day, then nothing gets done, whatever. So be transparent, claim when you need a day, take a day. And so something else I want to talk to you about, Jen, that came up when I was reading your intro a little bit is, okay, you're a massage therapist, you have a business, okay, great, but you do a lot to engage your local community since you do have like a brick and mortar business. And something I'm super passionate about is helping people not just build revenue for themselves, but build that legacy, build that contribution. So talk to us a little bit about how you've navigated, this is what I do, this is my offer, and expanded so that it isn't just helping the people when they're on your table.
So, I always thought, and this is, I guess, why I went in and I got my undergrad degree in biocultural anthropology. I thought I was going to be Jane Goodall. Who knows? I mean, obviously those things have already been done and you can't be anybody else but yourself. So, I always thought that through daydreaming or whatever else it is, that I was going to be bigger than myself, do things that not only because that is what we are. There's a ripple effect in the things that we do and the things that we say. When you've seen this with like random acts of kindness, let's say somebody goes to Starbucks and they pay for the person behind them, and then hopefully that person behind them pays for the person behind them, and that's just kind of how the world really works. And whether it come, or you can apply it to referrals. I started teaching a massage class actually this week. And that's one thing that I was telling them yesterday is if you do something really great, that person is going to remember it and probably tell 2 to 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
If you do something really terrible, that person is going to tell like 10 to 15, anybody who will listen. And then those people are going to tell other people. So I always thought, okay, there's got to be a way. I'm not an engineer. My brain doesn't work like this. I don't know how to build a well to clean water in Africa, even though I would love to do things like that. Mm-hmm. So how can I apply that feel good, do good attitude to the life that I have? And I always told myself if I had the opportunity to do something like that, I would do it. And so when I started becoming successful in my business, I started realizing that this is my platform. This is my chance to do that. So I have this little, I did this silly like commercial a couple of years, maybe last year. And one of the catchphrases in it was the Pushy Goat, making the world better one massage at a time. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is the way that I've kind of applied it is I really wanted to take and do a portion of the service proceeds every month goes back into nonprofits. And so the first party that we had, it was like an open house and we did raffle tickets, and that's kind of how I started it off. And all the proceeds from the raffle went to things like the Fight to End Hunger with AARP and Heifer International and like bigger global things like that. Wow. And then as we started kind of progressing on, I realized, you know what, there's things here in my own community that could really benefit from somebody helping them out. So my sister, she worked at the time for a Title I school here in Wichita. And what I learned from that is that it's not necessarily paying off school lunches or being that Santa Claus that does that to help, but it's the fact that kids come to school with, you know, holes in their shoes and they haven't eaten breakfast or dinner. And, you know, so we started doing things like at Christmas, a portion of our proceeds would go to, from our services would go to purchasing like granola bars and breakfast foods and things like that, what we take to local low-income schools here in the area. That way they're sitting in the office for students who, you know, maybe didn't have a chance to eat because of whatever circumstance that their family is in. And then we started, you know, I just started connecting with other local nonprofits. We donate to, so every year when we have our customer appreciation party, we do a raffle and all the proceeds go to a certain nonprofit, whether it's like a Kansas Canine Rescue, because lucky me, not only is my life a dream life at this point, but it's also my dog's dream life. She gets to be with me all the time now. It's, you know, her dream has come true. She sits in my massage room and sleeps there all day long, and she's super happy. So we do like the Kansas Canine Rescue and CASA, which is a child advocacy group, for
amazing.
Yeah. So really basically what it is. And then we also did, the museum here, the Museum of World Treasures. We also did, donations every month for their, Coffee with a Curator program. That is an educational program for senior citizens. And, you know, so I just try to look into local nonprofits like that and just try to give back. And literally, I will tell you this every single time. If I forget a month to do something, I feel it. You see it on the books. But every month that I remember to do those things, it comes back. And I don't plaster it everywhere either. I don't tell people what we're doing every month. We just do it. And I think sometimes in those situations, people get caught up in well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, instead of just, you know, just be happy with the fact that you're in the position that you can do it and do it.
Wow.
And that's what I try to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just totally feel, that is a fact. When you give more, you receive more. And especially when you're just starting out, like you said, you know, you weren't in the position for a period of your time to be this generous or build this leg of your business. But as soon as you do add this philanthropy or this higher purpose to whatever you're doing, you're going to get more connection with people like you're talking about. More folks are going to be interested in supporting a movement that's bigger than just offering one service. And I think that the sooner you can find in your business or even just your household budget, you can find ways to donate. It will make you happier because it isn't even about the numbers on the books at the end of the day, right? It's that feeling, it's that purpose.
Absolutely.
So
And some months you can do more than you can other months, but you know, like you said, as long as you're paying it forward and doing something good and something kind and making your inner self, your soul, whatever you want to call it, feel happy, then you're going to exude that happiness and people are going to be attracted to you. And as long as you can see the value in whatever connection you're making with that person, even if there's not a monetary value, then I think you seal yourself and your life much richer than you did before. And really, that's what it's all about.
Yes. I was just talking to a client today who's kind of stuck in the dollar bill syndrome, if you will, and like the numbers aren't jiving and what about this and what about that, and we've been working together, so she didn't think this was too crazy of me to say. We know each other well, but I was like, girl, do you think your tombstone is going to say she had a 40K month? Like, come on, you know, you've got so many other things happening in your life. You know, the numbers might not be at a certain place, but like, let's look at, you know, the lifestyle that you're living and the extra time that you have on your hands. How are you using that, you know, as you become an entrepreneur? So it's maybe morbid, but it can be really effective to think about at the end of the game of life.
You know what? Sometimes being a little morbid really helps kick you in gear. The older I get, the more I realize how much I should probably be thinking about that. So it's not fun to think about, but it's there.
No, yeah. And like you said, it is motivating. We each have just a blink of an eye, as some people said.
Yep.
All right. We have a little bit more time, Jen, and I want to switch gears a lot. Not that this isn't a great topic. And I think some of the themes will probably come back. But as someone who went from being a solopreneur, if you will, just you conducting the services and working with clients one-on-one to now scaling and bringing people into your organization, onto your team, what have you learned when it comes to building a team and managing other people? Any advice you have for people transitioning from singlepreneur to organizational leader?
Well, I will say this, growing pains hurt. And you learn so much more about yourself than what you learn about other people. And so I think one big piece of advice that I could give, in not necessarily the process, but in just kind of being kind to yourself and understand that you are going to have to learn to communicate differently, which was a huge challenge for me. And it still is. And one thing that I thought, I was just thinking this morning, like, wow, I'm looking to hire, a couple more people. And I'm thinking, I think I'm actually to the point that I may be mentally ready to take these people on and be more responsible for them. Whereas before I thought I was ready, but I really just needed help is all it was. And I wasn't necessarily so I was kind of just like, oh my God, help me. Come, I will keep you busy. I will put clients on your table. We can work really well together. But I really wasn't ready, like structurally and like the organization and the business to bring those people on. So thankfully, the people that I have with me currently are understanding enough in the fact that they know that this is a growing business and they're here for the long haul. And they're also able to call me out when I'm not necessarily working in an effective manner. So something that I've learned is to just not be ashamed to ask for help. Doing something for yourself for so long, it's easy to, I'm doing this, whether it's control or you want it to be done a certain way, or you don't know how to ask for help because you maybe feel like you don't want people to think that you're not as strong as you want them to think you are. but it's actually takes a stronger person to ask somebody for help than it does to just try to pile it all onto your shoulders. So that's probably yeah, right. And I still learn that every single day because I don't want people to think that I'm taking advantage of them. So not only would it be to just kind of be a little more forgiving of yourself and the growing pains that you're going to go through and just to embrace it, but it would also be to embrace the idea that it's okay to ask other people for help because that's what they're there for. And they want to see you succeed because if you succeed, they succeed. When they grow, I grow. And that's the way that I saw it before. I didn't see it before the way that they were looking at it, as in if I grow, they grow. So, there's two sides of every coin, right? So those are probably the two most important things that I would say.
That's a huge distinction, though, when you're bringing people into your vision or onto your team, is really what is the dynamic? What is the relationship? And are you set up to scaffold and mentor and teach someone? Or are you really just in I need to outsource and
right.
a worker bee, and absolutely asking for help, but understanding the dynamic of that help? Because I've hired assistants when I've really needed a coach, or I've hired a coach when I really just need a graphic designer. And I think that as for folks that are on that growth edge of, all right, I'm ready, I need help, or I'm ready to grow in some way, really taking a minute to pause and think about what is the dynamic that I need. Is it help or is it growth?
Yeah, definitely. If I would have just taken a break and even just written down what my expectations were from the person that I was asking help from, then that would have just given me a clear mental map of how to interact with them and to help them help me. Like, you can't expect somebody to read your mind, right? But and we say that all the time, but when you're in that mode and you don't take a moment to just slow down and take a look at things, that's really what you're asking somebody to do. And I was guilty of that for sure. And
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and having, a little bit of self-awareness, and where I'm at now is I'm taking a further step. I mean, I did just add a whole other, job to my, I'm working 3 jobs right now. I don't know what I was thinking, but,
the teaching piece, right?
Yeah. So and that's something else too, that honestly was not even me that realized it. I was talking to one of my best friends on the phone, and he just offhandedly said, "Wow, now you have 3 jobs." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Well, you're a massage therapist, you're going to teach massage, and you're a business owner." And I think sometimes that's something that we don't, that's not a way that I thought of it before. I didn't think of being a business owner and entrepreneur as an actual job. I thought of it just as, it's just, the umbrella that everything falls into. But hey, guess what? I'm the one holding the umbrella. So, it was a little eye-opening for me. So I think just being able to take a step back, and my word of the year is balance. Because I'm not very good at that. Being able to take a step back and realize, I'm putting all of my energy here, but I don't actually have to, because I have these people here to help me. And so now I'm to a point where I'm doing more administrative stuff during the day when we're actually open, instead of from 8 to midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning when everybody else is sleeping, and I'm just going crazy because I didn't do all of these things because I had all of this other stuff on my plate during the day.
So once you have the help, use it.
Yeah.
It's
funny how that works.
That's an interesting concept, though. The whole, you have 3 jobs versus you're an entrepreneur. And I think that just speaks to the power of yes and no. When you're in your vision, you're going to get tons of opportunities, and people are going to want you to do this and then host that and then teach this and then be here. And sometimes it can feel like, well, this is my work. I have to say yes. And all of this can fit into this vision I have. But sometimes it is helpful to take a look at how everyone else is living their life and maybe reconsider that work-life balance concept that I was so preoccupied with when I worked 9 to 5. But now that I work all the time, I don't think about it, which is just probably not okay. So that's definitely an interesting perspective for entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Can I add a little extra thought to that? Something that I've thought about and what may help other people is that when I'm stuck in that yes, no scenario where you want to like spread yourself super thin, even though you don't realize you're doing it. Sometimes I thought that if I had said no to people, they would think that I wasn't willing to work really hard, even though I was working all the time and really hard. But I also thought that maybe people would interpret me saying no as me not being grateful. And that was a fear. It was like a fear-based emotion that I didn't want people to see me a certain way. And just because you say no and you set boundaries does not mean that you're not grateful for the opportunities that come your way. It just means that you cherish yourself and your health and your wellness more than spreading yourself too thin and being there for other people, because you can't be there for other people if you can't be there for yourself. So
absolutely.
That was something that really helped me when I realized that I was operating from fear when it came to those things, and I changed my perspective. People started reacting differently to me as well. So yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You're doing good. Whoever you are out there, you're doing great.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And the other piece that reminds me of is the only person you can make happy is yourself. And if you're so caught up in saying yes and people pleasing, you're the only one that you can please. So you're just going to be spinning your wheels and people are going to move on, but you have to be the one that lives with those decisions. So
For sure.
All right. We are reaching our little pop quiz round. Just 3 last questions. You've been doing great, but are you ready for some rapid fires?
Oh, I hope so. Let's do it.
Okay. Number 1. What is one thing listeners can do today that you know will help them get closer to their dream life?
Oh, God.
A thing, like an action, an activity.
A thing. Yeah. I started listening to podcasts, reading books, just ingesting a lot of positive words and energy from other people. And I started learning from others by listening, and it empowered me to do that. So if it were me, I would say, grab a really positive podcast. Stop listening to all the Criminal Minds stuff. We all love it. But whenever you listen to that stuff, it starts bringing that negative energy into your world. So, take, your mornings and just listen to positive things. Don't turn on the news. Turn on a podcast. Turn on a positive book. I have the Happiness Project on my Audible every single morning, and that's what I listen to. So, just surround yourself in positivity whenever you can, and then you'll start seeing that change in your life.
So true. So true. All right. Number 2 is, if you could give a gift to every listener, like a tangible resource, maybe it's a massage, maybe it's a book, maybe it's, something else that is a tangible resource you would recommend, or a specific podcast like you just mentioned.
Okay. So I think I just gave part of that away with, well, obviously I listen to your podcast, Hannah, but they already do.
They're already here. Yeah.
Yeah, they're already here. So Happiness is a great podcast by Gretchen Rubin that I really love. And also I will tell you a tool that other people gave me, and it is Upwork. Upwork.com.
Yeah.
I give them the information, and I have them do all of my editing and all of that stuff, and I don't have to think about it. So Upwork.
I love that one. And I'm surprised you're a big Gretchen Rubin fan. She's so I don't know. I read the book and I was just like, okay, that works for stay-at-home moms.
You know what though, Hannah? It's funny that you say that, because I purchased that book, and I know because the receipt is still in it, in June of 2012 when I first moved back to Kansas. And I only got through half of the first chapter because that's where the receipt is. And I put it up on my bookshelf and I never picked it up. But when I came back from China, because we had a lot of time on that bus, so I was thinking, I was in my head. And so when I came back, I thought, I'm going to give it another shot. And I picked it up off my bookshelf. And as I started reading it, I realized why I didn't finish reading it before. And it was because I couldn't identify with her, because I wasn't married. I wasn't a mom. I wasn't any of those things. And so it seemed, kind of like boring to me.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm a little older and I see, okay, you know what? I don't have to be a mom and I don't have to be married. I don't have to have any of those things to understand that the bigger point, the purpose of what she's doing is just like that play, The Bluebird. It's finding happiness in your everyday life. That was her project. It wasn't necessarily finding happiness being a wife. It wasn't finding happiness being a mom or an author or a lawyer or whatever it was. It was about finding happiness in the everyday. And she's from Kansas City. So, she's also a Midwesterner. And as I listened to the Happiness podcast, they talk about that a lot. And they talk about how, even in her book, and you might remember this, when she first came up with the idea, she met somebody at a party and they said, well, how are your life is this, and this. How are you going to identify with somebody in the Midwest? And she actually said, well, because I'm from the Midwest. So that's what happened. And then as I started reading the book and I started listening to her podcast again, literally a week after I started reading it, they were talking about the 10-year anniversary of the book.
Oh.
And, my nephew, I had bought the 1 sentence a day happiness project journal. I had it in my hand last year, right before Christmas. And for whatever reason, I walked around that bookstore and I just thought, you know what, you don't need to buy this. And when I went to go exchange gifts with my nephew and my sister and everybody, he was like on the edge of his seat. My sister's like, he's so excited to give you this present. And I opened it up and it was that journal. It was the Happiness Project journal.
Wow.
And so I think sometimes, so this is a long-winded, response to what you were saying, but I think it's the fact that the reason that I'm a fan of hers is because now I can take a step back and understand the bigger picture of what she was doing and what she was trying to do for other people. It was like, this is my journey. This is my story, but you can also be happy every single day. You don't have to just, always, like we were talking about before, it's not always the next bigger and better thing. You can take a moment and just be present, be where you are.
Yeah.
So,
and what got me through that book was it was about the daily habits and the principles of success or happiness.
Yeah.
And you can read, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're 65-year-old Jack Canfield or you're Elizabeth Warren, like everyone can write how they've navigated it. And I find myself gleaning the same principles over and over. So it's great that she resonated with you a decade later.
Right.
I just still have her, because when I read it, I was like, okay, like this is how a stay-at-home mom, or not, she's not a stay-at-home mom, but I just got that vibe from her. And you and I have talked about how we are so not that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I totally understand where you're coming from. And I had that experience 10 years ago. But now
working the principles, doing the journal, reading the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question is, where can people stay connected with you and learn more about what you do?
Well, right now we, my website, thepushygoat.com. It also has a blog and all of that stuff. You can also find me on Facebook under the Pushy Goat, on Instagram under the same thing, and also Jennifer Sauer. That's Sauer. And those are probably Jennifer Sauer, the Pushy Goat. You can find me on all of those places. I would love the opportunity to connect with other, like-minded individuals. So please find me on one of those places and reach out, send me a message, do whatever you want to do, except for send me an inappropriate picture. Please don't do that.
Please don't do that. No. We have a very respectful, eager to connect audience. And it's so amazing. You are in Kansas, you have a brick and mortar business, but the power of the internet, we can definitely stay connected with not just, the service and the work that you do, but the mission that you're on to do good things and make a huge impact. So
I would love it. I would love it so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, storytelling, and wisdom today. Listeners, I will be back next week. I don't know. Maybe Jen will become a little like guest host.
Oh, I would love it.
We hardly joked. We were like so serious today about work, but it's still good fun.
But you know what? That's that's what we do. That's what entrepreneurs do. We know how to have a good time, but we also know business means business. So, 2 stars for us.
#balance. All right, friends. I will be back next week with another inspiring guest that will help make your dream life your real life. Until then.
You've been learning how to make your dream life your real life with Hannah Hermanson. To get the resources mentioned on today's show and to listen to past episodes, visit www.dreamlifeisreallife.com.